Om Shanti. Today I'm going to give you the most powerful of all possible mantras. Do you like that? But you have to know how to use it. There is nothing more powerful than this mantra. A mantra is an idea. I'm going to be amplifying it through the whole rest of the retreat. But in Indian language, it is called Vashikaran Mantra. Vashikaran Mantra. You can spell it however you want. What that means is the mantra, which is the idea, the recommendation, that brings everything under your influence. They say the greatest accomplishment is the conquest over death and the conquest over matter and what they call Maya, which means that which is not there. That means it's illusory. It's not real. This session is about the paradox of things that don't fit together. So there are many things that don't fit, right? The one that relates to the meditation that we did this morning is that what you are and what has happened to you are two completely different things. So what you are as a soul is pure, peaceful, powerful, loving, blissful, being of light, who is free. And what has happened to you is all of these qualities are much depleted and you are not free. So the Vashikaran Mantra is the thing that you keep in your mind which negates what has happened to you. We're going to learn a little bit how to use this so that you bring yourself back to that freedom. It's not so easy, but we'll do it anyway, right? The thing is that death is temporary, and people don't know this. They say the only thing that's certain is death and taxes. Do you know this one? Yeah. Even taxes are temporary, and you handle it. How is death temporary? You know that the soul is called immortal. And you say, upon my soul, as if you are someone who possesses a soul. But it's not really that. This word mine, which applies to a possession, and the word me, which applies to myself, has been turned upside down. Why is this so? Because of the effect of time. What does time do? You know this when you file your taxes, that when you have assets, there is a reduction in their value due to deterioration, correct? So this is what time does, is it causes deterioration. It causes deterioration of your body, and it also causes deterioration of the soul. That means deterioration of the self. So the self deteriorates due to time. And that deterioration of the soul due to time is further compromised by negative karma, which means you do action that put you in debt, which reduces your worth or your value. And when you are aware of yourself as a soul in terms of being out of time, then there's no deterioration. So deterioration occurs when you're embodied. When you leave your body, you also come out of the dimension of time. So when you die, you stop deteriorating. Of course, your corpse continues to deteriorate quite rapidly, but your self stops deteriorating. This is new information, I presume. But you need to think about it. And after death, you again take a body and you resume your deterioration through a new body. And your body grows and reaches maturity and then deteriorates. And you perform different actions through that body, of which some are positive and some are negative. But overall, there's deterioration. And so the experience that you have of being you is not as you would experience if you were not deteriorated. What we're doing with this mantra is making a big differentiation between how you feel yourself to be and what you know yourself to be. These are very different. What tends to happen is that you give a lot of validity to what you feel. You say, I feel tired, or I feel happy, or unhappy, or I feel young, or I feel confused, or I feel angry. Different types of feelings, different types of emotions, and you take these to be real, because they are real. But then what you do with something that's real temporary and what you do with something that's real permanent is different. So meditation means to make yourself more sensitive to what is real permanent and to diminish the influence of what is real temporary. When meditating, in a way, make a list for yourself of what you really believe to be real, but which is temporary, like death, for example. I don't think many people think of death as a temporary occurrence. They think of death as a final thing. Even if they believe in reincarnation, they still think like that. To introduce into your thinking the idea of death as a temporary thing has implications. one implication is that your relationship with it is different. Do you fear death? Mostly the answer to that is, I don't know. I will find out when the time comes. But when you get a near-death experience, this is very convenient because you get an opportunity to know. Because you face it full on and you go and then come back, something like that. Or you are about to die and then you don't. And then you know you're afraid of it or you're not afraid of it. Because you cannot know by agreeing with the idea that you're an immortal soul. It's not sufficient. We need to be able to cause a direct experience to happen or take an advantage when a direct experience happens to know that my fear is there or not there. Because if you don't know, then you will make an assumption based on influences. One important influence is someone comes along with a gun and says, I'm going to kill you, and then you find out how you feel. And usually people are quite influenced by something like that because it's very shocking and fearsome. And you don't have much preparation for it because it's not part of schooling or something like this. That how will you handle this? Because they may pull the trigger with bullet, or they may pull the trigger without bullet, or they may change their mind, which sometimes happens. It's an extreme event. There can be an operation, an operating table. Sometimes a person's heart stops or something like this, and they come out from the body and they see all these surgeons, pumping away and whatever, and then they get sucked back into the body. Usually because of remembering their relatives or something that they're attached to, and they just say, no, I'm not going, I'm coming back. And they come. This is how it is reported. Yeah? But then sometimes they will say, yeah, I experienced and I am not afraid. And others, they say, I experienced and I am afraid. You get both. We investigate such things intellectually to help us to come to terms with the idea, because there is a reality, fear of the unknown. In a culture which is materially based, example, I have two relatives who are medical people, doctors, and they said to me, well, if our patient dies, it means we have failed. What a strange idea is that? It does not mean you failed. The patient died means the patient died. You didn't fail. But their feeling, because of their belief, is that their function is to prevent death. But it isn't really their function. Their function is to maintain life as far as possible, and after that it's out of their hands, but it doesn't mean failure, But the culture and the ideas around says that, and so they adopted that belief. This is called an influence. We are highly influenced by our parents and how we were raised. And then we are also highly influenced by our education and all the intellectual input that we acquired through our life. This we take to be true. We form our sense of reality, our sense of self, our sense of what is, on the basis of having concluded that what we are told is true. We are also highly influenced by the cultural and religious environment. That depends on how strong it is and how much validity you give to it. So these three influences create a limitation on us. In order for us to be free, really free, which I think is the purpose of all this, we need to revisit all these things which we have taken on board since earliest childhood and decide again what we think now. There are many things that come into our consciousness which we do not critique. What we acquire through how we are raised by our parents is we assume that whatever they say and whatever they do is the right thing. We are completely unable to look at them dispassionately as a detached observer and evaluate them. We do not have that possibility as children. It's impossible. Maybe later to some extent, but the influence is there and it sticks. So that though you may know something, that they had this or that problem and therefore it wasn't their fault or whatever, but the influence is there. And so the way that you respond in terms of your action, your feeling, your behavior, your responses, your interpretation of what's going on has hooked onto your soul, and all the understanding in the world will not undo it. This mantra, Vashikaran Mantra, has the capacity to undo even such a thing. So that's of interest, right? Because we want to be free. The way to claim this freedom is to use the thinking, use the meditation to really think all the way to the core of this influence. There are certain messages that different people in psychotherapy speak about in terms of something that limits them. For example, a very common one for women, you are only a woman. Just that expression. When it's told to a girl, you are only a girl or you are only a woman, then she will say, I'm only a woman, I'm only a girl. So this word only will come on and it will diminish her sense of her value in her own mind, so that in subsequent circumstances she will limit her potential by putting this word only in there, and then she will not fulfill her potential because of having internalized this word only. Such a simple thing, but yet it's a very powerful influence. Another one that you hear as a child is, why are you not like your brother or your sister? And of course, the answer is, because I'm me. But very few children can actually make that answer because of the vibration that goes with that question, which implies you are inferior. This feeling of being less than is taken in, and it drives the person for all the rest of their life. So many things that they do will be to compensate for that, except that the influence is so powerful that whatever you do doesn't actually compensate or doesn't actually neutralize it. So this mantra has the capacity to succeed in this. And so it is very much of interest. Our culture, Western European culture, gives a lot of importance to finding fault. If there is something wrong, there's a mark on the carpet. The whole carpet is fabulous, but you don't see that, you see the mark on the carpet. There's something wrong, you see. The foundation of this is to be found in the religion, where this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, you should be, you shouldn't be, you ought to be, you ought not to be. These modal verbs are used. A child will believe these things because it comes from powerful authority figures. Why would you not believe it? In fact, if you don't believe it, you're on your own and you're no longer a child. But it was too early, you're not ready. This is just a factor of culture. Most people are born with it, grow up with it, die with it. Death being a temporary event, it starts again and it becomes more and more deeply ingrained, and it becomes there in the whole culture. When you look at this paradox of I am a pure, peaceful, powerful, loving, blissful being of light, genderless, ageless, colorless, cultureless, languageless. This is the reality. But what do we become is influenced by history, nationality, gender, culture, language. All these things are told to us, this is your identity, and this is how you should feel about people who are other. A different gender, a different color, a different culture, etc. They are other. And then whoever is like you, they are ours. And you take your identity from this, and you also take limitations. So I cannot do this or that because of one of these things. Even if you struggle against it with all the intellectual prowess in the world and achieve something which appears to prove that you are not limited by those things, deep down in the bottom of your soul, there is this impact, this limitation that takes you away from your true self and makes you feel a feeling which is very powerful, very real, but which does not correspond to your essence. So this is a big paradox. What happens to us in life is real. To deny it would be to lie. And there's no point in denying it, because then you become very artificial, which is weak. We have to assume all of this and accept all of these things and take them into ourselves. But you have to say to yourself, so what? It neutralizes it quite a bit. We tend to agree that you have to be what you are not. We agree with that. You are not such and such a thing, but you have to be whatever you're not. And then we agree with that. And then we have to accept we are not what we agree that we have to be. And then we can't say so what so easily. To be able to say so what means that what you actually are is actually superior to whatever you're supposed to be that you're not. Which makes it a lot easier to say, so what? Or they will say, okay, you are not a PhD. So what? Well, you can't get a job unless you're a PhD. Watch me. I'll get one. Who says? So what? These are tacit agreements in different gatherings, or even in spiritual practice. You will say, okay, this is a spiritual family, right? So it says, it's a spiritual family. So you say, okay, a spiritual family has to be like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it isn't. So what? What difference does it make to the price of rice in China? Nothing. But very easily we latch on to something which we don't have to, because of the influence of many people saying yes, 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 yes. There's also a paradox. We need to adopt very, very deeply, by thinking about it really deeply, that I am a spirit. Would you say you're not? I am a spirit, or not? You have to have something that you hold on to, you see, which you say, yeah, this is true, I am a spirit. And that implies I am not of a particular nationality, or a particular culture, or a particular gender, or if I'm neither one nor the other, whatever the majority thinks it has to be. And so in that way you neutralize these projections that are put onto you. And it's called socialization. And before you were socialized, you were not socialized. It means we have to take into consideration this thing called time. Time means deterioration. And there's nothing wrong with deterioration. What's wrong is if you think that time does not mean deterioration. The cosmetics industry thrives on this idea. We will make you young. Oh yes, great, I will pay you lots of money to become young. Okay, very good. But you won't become young. The soul deteriorates and the body deteriorates. So then you say, well, I don't understand how the soul can be immortal and deteriorate. It doesn't fit. Am I right? So then we need to probe this matter a little more deeply. How can you be both immortal and deteriorate? Because that is the statement. You are immortal and you deteriorate. So you say, well, I can't process that idea because these two statements are mutually exclusive. But they are paradoxical. How do you have something which is eternal and immortal and deteriorates? One possible way to approach it is to think of the planet Earth. So we know that there is deterioration of the planet Earth because climate change and this and that, entropy, all this. But we also know that matter cannot be created or destroyed. It changes, but it can't stop being. So that's also a paradox. But it's easier to think about that one first than the soul, which is intangible, being immortal and deteriorating. In spiritual study, there is also the idea that when everything reaches its maximum point of deterioration, then very rapidly it goes back to the original point, which is like the J-curve graph. It goes to a certain maximum, not through the ceiling, just a certain maximum, and then it goes down all the way to the bottom. And that's a phenomenon that is comprehensible mathematically. And it applies to everything. So there is a spiritual law that we need to understand, that when everything reaches its maximum, that finishes and starts again from zero. So there is a maximum point of deterioration which brings you automatically and instantly back to your point of original departure, which is your perfect state. So in meditation, you are remembering your original state. And by doing that, you're bringing the end and the beginning close together. As they say, Alpha and Omega. It is that. So the expression is there, but the understanding is not so clear. How do you get Alpha and Omega to come together? So you need to understand this law and think about this law that is expressed in this expression ati so ant. When it reaches the maximum, the extreme, then it finishes and starts again. There is a maximum amount of deterioration that can happen to a soul. And once you hit that point, everything restarts very quickly. It's fairly easy to look at it from the point of view of the body. Why would a person die? There's usually some reason where the body is no longer able to support the presence of a soul. It's not working properly, or the heart stops, or the brain stops, or the lung stops, or something fails, and then there is departure. The soul comes out of the body, And as soon as the life force is no longer in the body, then there is an immediate arrangement for all the cells of the body to destroy themselves. And you go back dust to dust. But that's not you, that's it. We say, my body, or my microphone. My microphone is clearly an it. My body is also an it. Myself is a being. But our language assumes that the body is a self. And then your clothes are not yourself. It is often said that the body is the clothing of the soul. Or it is said the body is a domicile. You live in your body for X amount of years. You have a life expectancy. That's not the life of your being, that's the life of your vehicle. When you buy a car, you think it will last X number of years, or you will sell it in such and such a period of time and replace it with a newer, better model. This is a paradox, that we are seen, this physical body is me. People will relate to you as your body. And all the attributes of your identity, male, female, whatever nationality, culture, etc., etc. So in meditation we say, yes, that is a reality, but it's a temporary reality. So on the one hand we have to tell ourselves that that which we thought was real needs to be qualified by the expression temporary. Just temporarily what I am. When you get sick, you know that that's temporary or fatal, but even that's temporary also. So the reality is what it was like to be me before anything ever happened. And this is the anchor point. So the idea is to anchor yourself to this is me in my perfect condition, completely, fully empowered, full intelligence, full beauty, fully loving, fully free, fully competent, fully everything. That is my actual identity. And to anchor oneself to that identity means that anything that happened under the impact of time, also under the impact of something that happened to you, which is an additional influence along with time. Some kind of trauma, some kind of loss, some kind of shock. Different things happen which scar your being and distort your sense of self. But it's still not the same as what it was like to be me before anything ever happened. Normally we tend to anchor to what happened. So we need to raise anchor from that and anchor to what it was like to be me before anything ever happened. In meditation we call it remember. Remember who you were thousands of years ago. You can't remember consciously, but you can understand the logic. And once you understand the logic of deterioration, you can appreciate that it is not possible for me to have reached this state unless I started in another state. It's not possible. The description of that other state is something to consider. You consider in meditation, is it true? Ask yourself, is it true that regardless of what happened to me in this life or however many other lives, the reality of me is I am actually pure, peaceful, powerful, competent, excellent, perfect, and in fact, I would not want to be anyone other than me. Because the best thing there is that I am me. And once you have tasted that, touched that, then you can see the difference. This is what I am, and this is what happened to me purely because of time. What this does is it cancels out the load on the modal verbs that are used. Should, have to, ought, mustn't, shouldn't, etc., etc. Because then you can immediately say to it from the depth of your being, so what? Why do you think that means something? It doesn't mean anything. This happened, that happened, so on and so forth. Okay. And so you neutralize the influence. This is the Vashikaran Mantra. We use the idea to neutralize this absolute dominance that this event or set of circumstances or a different type of pressure had on you. No doubt it had, but you can neutralize it by calling it as it is, which is a temporary aberration, which doesn't mean you deserved it. Otherwise people say, if something bad happened to you, you deserved it, right? And you say, something bad happened to me. Why? 2 reasons. Only 2 reasons. One, to make me strong, and the other to make me experienced. That's it. Everything else is irrelevant. So what? So this mantra, so what, is easier to remember than Vashikaran Mantra. So to be able to say so what is really good. Because otherwise there's this doubt in the self. And doubt in the self diminishes your ability to be you. It diminishes your ability to fulfill your potential and to be comfortable in your skin and so many things. When you're by yourself and writing in your journal, it is quite good to consider those like thoughts or statements or messages that you have internalized and which have diminished you in your own eyes. And then write it down and then write, so what? Because it really doesn't matter. It only matters if you think it matters, if you believe it matters, if you allow yourself to continue to be driven by it. It's a very strong force, so it will exert itself, no doubt. But when it exerts itself, you have the option to use your mantra and say, so what? Or what difference does it make to the price of rice in China? That's the one I use, because it clearly make no difference to anything. You make it small. Otherwise it was received as something overwhelmingly big. But you using this mantra to make it small, which means it cannot influence you. You're not denying it. It is there. It did various damage for various amount of time. And that also, okay, so be it. It is what it is. I am now assuming my freedom and asserting my freedom and asserting that what I am, what my identity is this. But that thing will keep coming back. And it will come back in social situations. Because it arrived in a social situation. So whenever there's a social situation where that type of thing is activated, you get an opportunity to work with it and deactivate it. You will not succeed all the time and every time, but at least you know that you have the option to say, so what? And quickly. Because an influence is something that comes and takes you down. Then it takes more time and effort to come out of it. But if you can catch it quickly, then it can't do that. So there's a certain agility in practicing to catch it, recognize it when it's going on, and realize that this whole thing is a game, and it's a competition, and you are playing to win. And if you lose, that's also temporary. You may lose a few battles, but you will win, because that's your identity. I am this. But there are many things which will be these wounds in your soul, these barbs that have been shot at you to make you small in your own eyes. So, take them out. Throw them away. But they have elastic band and they come back. Many times we have to do it, but it's okay, however many times. Doesn't matter. You just do it. You have to have breakfast every day, you just do it. So you take out these things every day also. It's okay. And you are easy about the fact that it is there is an influence, and now you're taking charge, taking power, and applying your mantra. And if you have to do it 5 million times, you will do it 5,000,001 times. Because you can. So it requires patience. Because again and again and again, you get caught. This is normal. You get caught. But you recover from it progressively quickly, and you realize that this whole thing is a big cosmic joke. And you take it less seriously. And you realize that it's just all about the effect of time. It completely negates any kind of guilt-inducing activity. Because a guilt-inducing activity induces guilt and diminishes. So anytime, by any chance, if you feel guilty about anything, it should never occur for longer than 1 second, because that's quite sufficient. 2 seconds is too long. And the feeling of guilt is purely and simply a signal from your conscience that says, oops, shouldn't have done that. Okay, won't do it again. Simple. Let's go. It's okay, you know. But the socialization, education, religious, all of this is especially designed to keep us weak in many ways. And now that we have seen through the game, we are at an advantage.